What is a Maori potato and how do you grow them? Today I'm going to tell you. G'day there, I'm Dana from Pewakaka Valley Homestead. Today I am planting all my root crops and my tuber crops, and I thought I would share with you how you go about planting and growing Maori potatoes. I have two varieties of traditional Maori potatoes to grow today. I have a urenika and I have a waiporoporo. If you live elsewhere in the world, these may not be so easily available to you. However, if you live in New Zealand like we do, they are an old traditional variety potatoes that were almost died out completely, and there's been a bit of a resurgence of people trying to grow them. And I'm really glad that I tried them last year because they are delicious. They're really similar to a normal potato, but with a bit of variety, as you'll see in a second when I show them to you. They come with some really cool colours. They're a little bit unique, and actually they've grown really prolifically for me, as well as, if not better than, my bog standard potatoes that I usually grow. So this is a waiporoporo potato. It's a little bit hard to see because it is a little bit dirty, but you can kind of tell it's sort of white and purple. I'll see if I can cut it in half and see what it looks like on the inside. And as you can see, these ones, despite being white and purple on the outside, are plain white in the middle. They are really good for boiling, mashing, and if you do them when they're a wee bit younger, they're starchy enough to make a really good potato salad. And these other ones they're waiporoporo are new to me for this year. These are the ones that I grew last year. They do look a little bit like a poop, but they're really delicious. They're called urenika. And they are that dark purple all the way through. Some of them have flecks of white in them, but if we snap one in half, you can see they are dark purple all the way through. They taste just like a normal potato, and they're really good for mashing. I found I did leave these a little later to harvest, so they're nice and big. This is one of the smaller ones that I harvested. There were a bunch of tiny ones, of course, but I did get some really big sized ones. And when you wash them, the skin's really shiny, almost iridescent, like glittery, which is cool. But these ones have been stored in my laundry for a while and they've all started to sprout, so it must be time to get them in the garden. Maori potatoes have been here since pretty much New Zealand was originally settled. Some places they do kind of grow wild around New Zealand. They'll be a great plant to add to your food forest, just to let them grow. You can harvest what you want and just let them continue to grow. Generally speaking, they will overwinter in the ground quite happily and then come away when the weather warms up. Like most potatoes, you can leave them to sprout before you plant them. It will give the plants a wee bit of a head start, but it doesn't matter if you don't. They will grow anyway, even if you don't what's called chit them. Chitting them is just leaving them somewhere with a wee bit of light to sprout. So it doesn't matter if you don't leave them to do that. You can just put them straight in the ground. It might just take them an extra week or two to break the surface at the top. Like growing any potatoes, growing Maori potatoes is the same. So you put them in the ground. You want some well rotted manure. The better fed the ground is, the better potatoes you're going to get. Try not to put any lime in there unless you desperately need it. If your pH is completely off the charts, then yeah, sure, add some lime. But generally speaking, lime encourages potato scab, so you kind of want to avoid doing that. Put them into some nice rich composty sort of ground and then cover them with at least 4 inches. What I usually do is dig a trench and then dig them 4 inches down into that trench. If you want to watch my video on planting my early potatoes, I'll put a link to that that shows you exactly what I do in the main garden. And then leave sort of mounds of dirt beside it so that when the potatoes come up, you can mound them up. Basically, the more you mound them up the stem, the more potato tubers you're going to get at the harvest time. I'm going to try and video the rest of this video before the weather turns completely sour. It's quite windy and there's rain coming in. But anyway, sowing Maori potatoes is exactly the same as sowing normal potatoes. This is in my garden, my normal veggie garden. Just be aware that any potatoes that you leave a tiny little tuber in the ground, they will grow back next season as more potatoes. Ignore this mess along here. Most of that is nasturtium that has died off, and it'll probably come away again now that the frosts are pretty much finished. You want to be sowing your potatoes into some nice rich soil. This has got lots and lots of worms in it. It's mostly compost, to be honest. I've had this tarped for a little while to help the compost break down and to help keep the weeds down. You can use potatoes to break in new soil, and Maori potatoes are no different to that. It does also have some old bits of plant matter in here, but that's okay. The potatoes will handle that just fine. Now the best way of growing potatoes is simply to dig a decent sized hole. I usually put them about 4 inches deep, about 10 centimeters, or for me that's about a width of my hand, just as an easy guide. I pop them in, and I usually only sort of cover them. You cover them with about 4 inches of soil, and make sure that you've got some spare soil around. I've got a couple of extra bags of compost that I'll use to hill them up once they've come up. So I'll turn the camera around and you can see what I'm doing. See this plant here? This is a case in point. It's a potato, it's a Jersey Benny that was left in the ground last season. Obviously a tiny little tuber was there and it started growing, so I'm just going to leave it be. First up are my urenika potatoes, and they have got some sprouts on them, so I'm just going to make sure that the sprouts are pointing upwards and cover them up. That's all it takes. No lime, no nothing, and just try and keep the soil nice and moist. This is perfectly moist, it's not soaking wet, and the potatoes will just do their thing. They're very, very low upkeep. So I'm going to be planting them about a foot apart. And it's exactly the same with all the Maori potato varieties. It's exactly the same with all the Maori potato varieties. This is the waiporoporo, and I'll plant it in the exact same manner. I'm going to put the camera away because it started to rain, and I'll get on and finish planting these. I hope you found this video really useful. If you have, hit the like button, consider sharing it with anyone else that you think might find it useful, and consider subscribing to our channel. We bring you videos twice a week on growing and preserving your own food and other homesteading bits and pieces. We'll see you in the next one.